So before we go on to our second audition exercise, I just want to take a step back and let you regroup and really reflect on what we just did. You have gone through your entire life story. I'm sure there's a bunch of pieces missing at the moment, but for the most part, we've gone through maybe about 30 to 35 different parts of your life. And those will all come into play here when we go into our second exercise. Something just dawned on me while I was making this recording. And you'll take note that I refer a lot to movies and to plays and to stories because that is my background. And for those of you who have never been in that world, the world of putting on a play or directing a movie, it's pretty miraculous what happens within the course of 2 to 3 months. A lot of factors have to come together because you're taking something that's on a page and you're breathing full life into it. You see, a lot of things have to come together in a relatively short amount of time. You're taking something from that page and breathing full life into it. The factors that come together are pretty miraculous when you think that you have costumes, you have makeup, you have lines to memorize, and then not only do you have lines to memorize, but you have to give those lines full emotional power. So what we'll be doing in the next 60 days is we're going to be taking the script, and that script is something that we are designing right now within the context of this recording and taking it forward so that you will become in full career of this quest, of this journey, and master the person that you are dreaming of becoming. Now, based on my calculations, when we played the game Headlines, we went through about 11 rounds, which started from the time you were about 5 or 6 years old all the way up through the present. So now I'm going to ask you, if you haven't done so already, to please take out a piece of paper and a pen, and I just want you to jot down some of the images or the sounds or the feelings that came up for you during this game that were particularly powerful. So if you need to, please pause the recording, and we will go back to these moments when you're all finished. Okay, now we're ready to get into the bulk of this audition. Are you ready? Okay, now I want you to think back through some of the scenes that you have relived now. And I want you to come up with one that felt like a birth or an origin or the beginning of some kind of dream in your life. Now, that could be a birth of a career. That could be the birth of a family. That could be a birth of a relationship. But I want you to go back to a moment where you were at the beginning of something that was truly fulfilling, maybe even exciting for you. Now, I'm going to reference two stories, two very popular stories, while we go through the rest of this audition. Now, first I'm going to reference the story of The Wizard of Oz. Now, the scene that represents this origin for Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz is that beautiful scene, I'm sure you remember it. She's standing in the farm, and she sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow. She wants to go somewhere else, someplace full of color, anything other than the drab life she lives there in Kansas. So that is when Dorothy makes a wish. And that is what you're going to be doing too when you're taking on your 60-day quest. When you answer the question, what would you do in 60 days that would surprise even you, you're making a wish for something. Now I'm going to go over to the male side of things. In the story of Star Wars, Luke Skywalker finds himself in a similar position. He works on his farm at his uncle's ranch in the desert planet of Tatooine. All he wants to do is escape his life of being just a simple farm boy and become a fighter pilot fighting the evil galactic empire. So just like Dorothy and just like Luke Skywalker, we're going to take a quest, and it begins now. What is your origin scene? What is your origin? As you're thinking about this, as you're thinking about your origin scene, I want you to picture where you were, what kind of objects might have been around you, what kind of people might have been in your life at that time. What were you wearing? How old were you? I want you to think up as many specifics as you can, and I want you to pick either a person or a prop or something that represents that origin scene for you. Now, my object for this scene is a gavel. And I'll tell you why. The first time I ever had been cast in a play was when I was in 6th grade. And I was cast in the lead of a play called Dear Abby. And I played John Adams. And this was like the biggest confidence boost in my entire life and kind of became the birth of my love for acting. And in that moment, I had this powerful scene where I had to gain control over the Continental Congress, and I banged my gavel and shouted out through the entire audience, "Please stop talking during the speeches. We're trying to birth a new nation here." And I'm improvising now, but that was the first moment where I discovered something that was really going to be meaningful for the rest of my life. So that would be my personal origin story. And as we go through the rest of these scenes, I'm going to read from the book some of the other participants in the Destiny 5 experience, what they had brought to their scenes as well. All right, if you're all finished with your origin scene, we're going to continue. If you're not, please stop the recording and take as much time as you need. This is very important because we are setting up the script for your life here. Okay, the next part is Act 1, Scene 2. It's the second part of our 9-phase hero's journey, and this is what I call the shadow. Okay, the shadow. I also call this the point of no return. Now, as you go back through your life and you think of all the scenes that you came up for yourself, I want you to think of one in particular where someone, something, or some event put it into your mind that you couldn't. Have you ever had a moment where someone or something told you that you couldn't do something, or you couldn't be something, or you couldn't accomplish something? Do you have a moment like that? Now, when we go into the story of The Wizard of Oz, what happens to Dorothy is that her house gets picked up by a tornado, a cyclone, hurricane, twister, whatever you want to call it, and gets dropped in the magical land of Oz right on top of a witch. And this pretty much ticks off the witch's sister, the other witch, which is, of course, the Wicked Witch of the West, and Dorothy has made a new enemy. So Dorothy has found the shadow in her story, and then she is forced to take a quest where she didn't have one before. Likewise, Luke Skywalker, after leaving his ranch to go pick up his friendly droid R2-D2, comes back to his home to find it completely destroyed, obliterated, and his aunt and uncle burned to a roasty crisp. Now Luke has no other choice but to go on his quest, and he wants to go on his quest. He has met his shadow. Now, what is your personal shadow? When you come up with your shadow scene, I want you to picture a prop, a person, or some kind of symbol that represents this scene to you. And I would like you to write that down in your notebook. So for every scene, for every act that we go through, I would like you to come up with a symbol for each one. I am now going to go to the Destiny 5 Experience book, and I'm going to read an account of one participant's response when she played this game and she came up with her shadow scene. We were playing word association. I said the word shadow. Serena replied, "My mother spitting in my face and calling me a whore." It was literally as if a driver was struggling to switch gears in Serena's brain. She peered back into the imaginary mirror, which she established in her previous scene. Serena pulled out an imaginary washcloth and wiped her face. Out the corner of her eye, she spotted the reflection of someone. Then Serena spoke softly. "I'm 14 years old, and you spat at me and called me a whore." "And what about the physical abuse, Mother?" "What? What's that? What did you say?" Serena turned around quickly to meet the eyes of an imaginary mother. "You're kicking me out. You're kicking me out of the house. Maybe I should be in a foster home then." "What? What's that you say, Mother?" Serena darted her eyes back into the mirror and then diagonally again, listening even closer to her mother's voice in her mind, as if she could see her mother stalking across the room. Serena shouted, "You're saying to me I don't want to know what they do with kids at foster homes? Mother, are you threatening me?" Serena began sobbing. "I'm being uprooted, all because the guy I was..." She stopped. After a moment's hesitation, she chose her next words carefully. "The guy I was sexually active with doesn't want a long-term relationship. And years from now, Mother, you're going to deny all this abuse ever happened." Serena turned away from the mirror, as if to confront her mother behind her. And that was Serena's scene when she was asked about the shadow. Now her symbol was the mirror. What's your symbol?